Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
I think it's a great opportunity to really push myself and try hard things and kind of get that affirmation that I can do hard things and have success and learn how to do things differently, learn from other people. I actually have really enjoyed being in a team dynamic and being teamed with so many different people that I didn't know before, because I've learned so much just in the year that I've really been racing.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
Oh, how can you not be romantic about adventure racing?
It's a metaphor.
I know it's a metaphor. Say the word, Chef.
Let it rip.
Welcome to episode 137 of the Dark Zone. This is your host, Brian Gatens. Today's episode, Team NYARA, Trek or Treat. Two kind of newer racers getting into the sport, growing in it. Navigation, teamwork, taking care of feet, food, overnight, all that sort of stuff. This is a wonderful episode. Shows the gap from being a beginner to an experienced racer. And Ashley and Greg do a wonderful job breaking down the challenges they had along the way. And we were delighted to welcome them to the show. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being a listener. Sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of the Dark Zone. And as we all know, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. For over 40 years, the American Himalayan Foundation has been on the ground, partnering with visionary leaders across the region. They bring education to girls at risk of being trafficked. They fund surgeries for children with disabilities who would otherwise be left behind. They support Tibetan refugees, protect fragile mountain environments, and stand by communities through earthquakes, pandemics, and floods. The foundation doesn't do fanfare, they do results. Quietly, relentlessly, with grit, respect, and deep local trust. If you ever trekked, climbed, raced, or dreamed of the Himalaya, this is a way to give back to the people who call those mountains their home. www.himalayan-foundation.org. And as always with all of our charity partners, they pay nothing for this ad. Thank you for your support, and please visit their website. Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. I roam the results of adventure races and I look for names and teams that are successful, that seem to work well together. And we want to get them on the show to talk about their dynamic as a team, the other races they've done, the other races they've been together with. And so for today in the show, we have Ashley Cheney and Greg Schmidt of New York Adventure Racing Association's team, Trek or Treat. Now, there was some pre-show debate. Is it NYARA or NYARA? So I'm going to go with NYARA. Our guests can call it however they want to call it. We are an open and inclusive pronunciation setting here. So Ashley and Greg, call it whatever you want. Thanks for being on the Dark Zone. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. Ashley, kicking it over to you to start us off with a little bit. You've been adventure racing. If I look over your left shoulder, there's medals hanging on the wall from other endurance sport events. Walk us through your background and how you got into adventure racing.
Yeah, so I think I'm a little bit unique in how I've gotten into endurance sports and adventure racing. My first road race was a 10K in June of 23. And then following that, I ended up going from being a hiker, working on the Adirondack high peaks, realizing I should probably know how to use a map and compass. So I started orienteering after meeting Greg at the rock climbing gym. And from there, it escalated quickly to adventure racing, where I did my first foot race, the Stockville, to kind of get my feet wet. And then Shenandoah Epic in 2024 last year was my first full adventure race. So I dove right into the deep end, into 24-hour races. And there's a lot more that happened in the past year in terms of races, bringing us to this most recent Shenandoah Epic that Greg and I raced together.
So you very much followed that typical trajectory of you had some, a little bit of endurance background. You were clearly outdoor person with the high peaks, and then off in the distance there were these other events, these other things going on, and you sort of dipped your toe, and next thing you know, you're racing for 24 hours.
right? You follow that typical growth pattern there.
I wouldn't consider myself previously an endurance athlete. A leisurely hiker is how I consider myself starting. So it escalated quickly.
Very nice. You jump right into 24-hour racing. So thank you, Ashley, for that.
Yep.
Greg, how about you? How did you get involved in adventure racing?
It started on the couch in college watching the Eco Challenge on TV. I thought, like, well, this looks awesome. I would love to do something like that someday, but never really thought it would happen. And then, like 4 years later, a friend of mine called me up and was like, hey, there's going to be one of those adventure races in Pennsylvania. It's only like 5 hours away. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yes, let's do it. And at that time, I was like, okay, I got to get ready. And went out the next day, tried to run 1.5 miles. And I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. So took a little bit more time to get back into shape. But I don't know, I've definitely always been a sports person, but was never really an endurance person before getting into adventure racing. But after that first race, like we were hooked. We signed up for another 6 hour, then a 12 hour, then another 12 hour, then a 24. And I've probably done 2 to 4 races every single year since 2006.
There are 2 things I want to point out about that. One is, at this point, I think that Mark Burnett should send me residual checks for Eco Challenge, because it is mentioned so often on the Dark Zone as being the gateway to the sport. Gateway. And for that Eco Challenge, was it old school? It wasn't Fiji. It was old school Eco Challenge. It was the ones that were back in the day. So which one do you remember? Do you remember anyone specifically which one it was?
Let's see. What was the, I don't remember exactly which ones they were. I do remember them like being in a tropical zone with like 20, 30 mile ocean paddles to get from place to place. One guy like crashing on his mountain bike and getting stabbed by like some bamboo shoots or something they had cut off. So it seemed pretty crazy.
It sticks with you.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's funny, those every once in a while the old videos are put up online and they're pulled down again, they're here, they're there. And Morocco, it was the one for me. Eco Challenge Morocco was the one that I remember. The camels in the beginning and the person getting thrown off the camel and the ocean kayaking. And what's nice about this is, and by the time this episode comes out, the race will be over. They return to Morocco this year with Bimbache, which is what I'm calling it, by the way. It could be Bimbache. I'm not sure. I'm going to call it Bimbache. But by the time this episode comes out, there'll have been a ton of coverage about a return to Morocco. Very exciting race with a lot of North American teams there. We'll definitely get some of them on the show. But once again, you're right, Greg, right? The idea of, Eco Challenge gets in your brain a little bit, and then you drove 5 hours to that race. Do you remember what your first race was?
It was 2006, the Goals Adventure Race, Edge, I think.
And in the beginning, for the two of you, and either of you could jump in and answer this question, when you make the leap from, leisurely hiker, if you will, as Ashley calls herself. I don't know many leisurely hikers, but we'll give you that. Leisurely hiker, outdoor person, sports person. You make the leap into adventure racing. What did you find to be the biggest challenge that you had getting into the sport? What was the primary barrier that you had to climb over to enjoy it?
I mean, definitely for me, it was like doing regularly scheduled workouts. I've always been like, I love playing sports, and I go to a rock climbing gym, and it's something I can just, show up and do for fun. And then to like build some level of endurance, I'm like, oh man, like I need to just like go for a run and schedule time and just to build up my base level. So that was pretty tough for me to build a schedule like that. And that's still my biggest weakness is I would rather sign up for like a race every weekend and do that instead of like do a 3 mile run 3 times a week.
Yeah, that was a very common for those who do bicycle racing. If you live in an area with a lot of bicycle races, you end up during the season, you don't do any training because you race on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, right? And that's your training. So if I hear you correctly, it's the cardio, right? It's the building the endurance that comes through regular training, which is boring, and you have to kind of really love it, and you have to do it knowing that down the road there's going to be a payoff in the adventure race. Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, I'll say for me, it was a lot of the unknowns and fears. I didn't know if my body would be able to get through the 24-hour race, the number of miles required, because I had never done anything like that. And I didn't know what would happen in those overnight hours of a 24-hour race. I heard stories going into it, just didn't really know what to expect. The other thing that was hard for me is I am a packer who packs for everything, especially when I hike in the high peaks. So being told that I really didn't need to bring certain items in my pack was really hard for me. And I think Greg can attest to Stockville. I was overpacked, and there were times when he was carrying my pack for me to help me get up hills because I wasn't ready to let go of some of the stuff.
So what was some of that stuff that you shouldn't have had in there that upon you were like, this was a mistake?
More water, more food, a few items for warmth, like multiple changes for things. I've since learned that body heat really does keep you warm. Wool really does keep you warm, even if it's wet. So just now I've gotten better at saying, I don't really need this. I didn't use this in the last race that I've been in, and really paring it down. But overpacking was a hard one for me to get through.
We were at a race one time earlier in our adventure racing career, and my teammate Jimmy and I were in the back of the trunk of the car putting our stuff together. And a veteran racer walked by and looked, and he goes, oh, you're packing your fears, I see. Because he knew all the food we had, all the water we had. Like it was you get nervous, so you bring more of that stuff along, right? And so that's one thing we have to learn about, like, it's okay to leave stuff behind and also coordinate with teammates. If everybody's carrying something, you have to go. And I don't know if you've seen this, the two of you, but like on the start line, sometimes there are some teams that are carrying nothing. Yeah. I mean, Greg, what do you think about, like, both, by the way, you both nodded your heads in agreement when I said that. Greg, how about you with the gear that you bring on the race? What have you learned over the years with the stuff you pack?
I mean, I've definitely gotten more efficient with, also just like slowly over time getting better gear, lighter gear. I don't mind too much, a little bit of extra weight or something a little bit bulkier, or I definitely don't have to have like the newest, latest and greatest gear. I do bring a lot of food. People laugh at me for how much food I bring, but I'm just kind of like a high calorie person. I'll even gain weight in some races. But I don't know. I think reliability is what's most important to me. So once I find something I like, or I see something else that was working really well for someone else, I try to integrate that into my setup.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that when you get into a pattern of gear that works, that you feel comfortable with, that you know is going to last out there, you just repack your pack the whole time. I had a teammate one time that he wouldn't even unpack his bag in between races. He would just load in more food. He'd dry his stuff out, repack his stuff, and go back out there. You mentioned the overnight stuff, Ashley, as being an unknown that you were curious about, the 24 hours, the exhaustion, and the darkness. What was that like for you? Because I remember for myself what it was like, and it was pretty weird that first race. Okay, I guess I'm not going to bed tonight, and staying awake through the night. How did both of your bodies deal with that?
Yeah, so at least in my first full 24-hour race, which was longest day last year with Matt Wilson, around 3 a.m., which I think is a common window for people, I started to get pretty tired. And I hadn't experienced that before to that degree. He was trying to keep me engaged, and I said, I just have to keep pushing. I took some caffeine gels and really just had to keep myself moving and got through it in that instance. So interestingly, Shenandoah this year is the first time that I've experienced something close to bonking. And that was in the late night, early morning hours. And that was a really hard experience for me because I had no idea how to get myself back. So Greg and I had to kind of work together to figure out how could we get through that experience. We were on the trek portion, which really didn't have options to stop. So it was a huge mental game for me.
So when you talk about bonking, there's the bonking that's related to being tired, and there's bonking related to a lack of nutrition. Sometimes it's a combination of the two. when you look back on that experience? Because, it's a good thing to talk about, right? All of us have low points in races. The trick is to not have everyone have a low point at the same time, right? Everybody goes through something. In retrospect, what do you think you should have done to avoid that? Or was it unavoidable? And how did you get yourself out of it?
I know from the experience that it was a fatigue-based bonk. My sleep leading up to the race, due to a few things going on in my life, wasn't as good as prior races. My nutrition intake leading up to the race also wasn't as great. So I think my body was just finally like, hey, we gotta sleep. Didn't know what to do at the time. I tried what I call my Zumi juice, which is a packet of caffeine that I mix with water. It's about 200 milligrams of caffeine. Usually that brings me back.
I'm sweating thinking about 200 milligrams of caffeine.
I've used it in those late morning hours, and it usually brings me back. It did not bring me back. We tried candy. We tried briefly pausing, and I just kept saying, I just need the sun to come up. I was like, I know if the sun comes up, my brain will realize we're supposed to be awake. But it was still an hour or so before the sun was going to rise. So I was basically sleepwalking, just kept moving, made sure that he was aware that I was having a hard time just in case I had to stop. And then I somehow came up with this really off-the-wall idea. And I said, I hope another team comes up soon, because I think maybe the novelty of talking to some stranger will help. Yep. And coincidentally, a solo came up. And I said, hey, I'm having a hard time. Can I just chit-chat with you? Don't slow down. I'm going to talk about random stuff, and just let me have that. And that helped. And then another team came up, a trio from Michigan, and I asked if I could chat with them for a bit, and that brought me through till the sun came up, and things improved quite a bit.
No, but that's a really good, the idea of the social interaction, right? You're activating a different part of your brain. You're distracting yourself. It's not just a dark tunnel of trees and woods, and the idea of doing that, right? I've seen it. I've experienced myself. I get that when I get to a TA, that I draw energy from other people. And so that was a great strategy on your part. Greg, when you saw this unfolding and you knew that Ashley was having a rough go of it, and what action did you take to help support her during it?
Definitely just kind of asking her questions, see, would this help? Would that help? And like offering, would carrying your bag help? Would towing you help? Would like stopping for a little bit help? See if we can kind of like figure that stuff out. But also sometimes just sitting back, and if she's moving, just keep moving with her and watch what happens. So
exactly. Right. Sometimes there is no problem to solve. It's keep moving forward. And to your point, Ashley, once that sun comes up, it's a different story, right? Once you're in natural daylight, there's a little bit of shot of adrenaline, and off you go there. We had a situation one time in a race. The four of us were racing. It was Jim, Shari, myself, and Pete. And we were exhausted. We were so tired. I think it was the main summer adventure race when they had the one over on the coast, and we were just beat. We'd been going really hard, and we were tired. Right, we'd camped out the night before, and Jim stopped to tie his shoe, and he got something to eat, and he turned around, and all three of us were laying on the ground sleeping, like we were out cold, and he had to wake us up to keep moving. So managing that overnight sleep is a really, really hard thing. Greg, kicking it to you a little bit. When you look at the areas that you had to grow, you mentioned the cardio and build that. What part of the sport did you take naturally to? What did you say to yourself, like, oh man, I'm in my wheelhouse here, and I have a natural skill set for this?
I think just running around in the woods off trail. Like it's just, I'm completely comfortable being out away from everything. I can move through just about anything comfortably. So I've never really had any fear of like being lost, or even if I realized I was lost, I never get worried about it or stressed about it. I can usually pretty easily like figure things out again and get back on a plan.
Gotcha. So you have the natural skill set there with navigation that you never really ever truly lost. You're just kind of not found right now, and you figure something out along the way. When the two of you raced, who took care of the navigation?
I mean, I did a lot of the off-trail stuff, but I let her take control over most of the bike section actually. And she got a lot of practice with some of the pacing and distancing. It did a great job with, like monitoring when to turn, or like, and giving me feedback too. So like if I was even like out in front, letting me know like what was coming up, if I needed to slow down, if I needed to look for anything. And I really like that like communication part of navigation. That's something in other teams that I've been on has always been like really important for like doing well. It's kind of like if your navigator also just kind of like keeps people involved, even if they don't have the maps. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common in the racers I talk to officially with the Dark Zone, and I talk to just in general when I'm at a race. The communication dynamic around navigation really is a tension point for a lot of teams, right? With two people, it's different, especially if you have two sets of maps and if you're both working together. It's a tag team. You're doing great together. When you get to 3 and 4 people, someone sometimes gets left out of the navigation conversation, and they feel like all they're doing is following the other people through the woods. And it's hard, though, because sometimes some navigators, and I'm curious as to your experience, the two of you as navigators yourselves, are you quiet navigators or are you talking navigator?
I would consider myself a communicative navigator. I want to make sure, especially since I'm newer to orienteering anyways, I want to make sure that the plan I'm coming up with makes sense and that I have people backing me up. So, in this race, I did a lot of the bike nav, and I would say in 2 kilometers, we're looking for this road, just somebody else to help look for the features that I'm identifying and make sure that we're on the right track. Also periodically stopping just to make sure we're making decisions as a team. That feels good for me. But bike navigation, I think, especially on these more point-to-point, longer bike races that we've had, it's easier to do that as well, versus some of the stuff that Greg did with some of the off-trail navigation. There's a lot of communication there still, but it's a little bit different. So, Greg.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think bike-based navigation compared to woods navigation are two separate animals. Very often, bike-based navigation is using trails. There's more markers, there's turns, there's things like that. I had the chance to race with some master navigators, and it blows my mind how he or she, they just have this map, and we appear to be aimlessly wandering through the woods, and we make 2 lefts, and there's the flag. I have no clue what's going on. Greg, what's your navigation background and your skill? How did you grow into being a navigator that's so strong in the woods?
I definitely did a lot of hiking and just exploring the woods as a kid, and like being off trail. Friends who had many acres of like property in the woods. So we would just go explore, and even without a map or anything. So just kind of getting that experience with, paying attention to the land, but also pre-experience of like sometimes how things look different, even if it's in the morning versus in the evening, and how different things look. And that, I think, just helps you pay attention or look at things a little bit differently. I also just always enjoyed looking at maps. I had done quite a bit of backpacking and multi-day hikes, and just enjoy looking over the maps, planning out new trips and where else we could go, and even, considering like, let's go on this off-trail trip. I had done some backcountry backpacking where there weren't trails, so just already kind of comfortable with navigation from that perspective. And once I found out, I didn't even know about orienteering until after I started adventure racing. Once I found out that there was like an orienteering club in Rochester, and then I saw orienteering maps, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, these maps are fantastic. So.
Yeah, an orienteering map is so specific and it's so tight. And that's advice that I would give to anybody who wants to develop their navigation skills, is go find an orienteering club, do one of their meets. If there's a permanent course, go pick it up, get out in the woods, and really develop that sense. Because I think what you're talking about, Greg, and you didn't say it specifically, but I'd be willing to bet that your strong background in off-trail travel, combined with holding a map in your hands, it gets a lot easier to take that 2-dimensional map and apply it to a 3-dimensional terrain, right? It's amazing how you could just sort of tell once it's in your hands, you get a quick sense of who you are. And it seems like that's been your experience there. Ashley, you being newer to the sport, you're probably on the earlier side of picking that up. Have you done any work specifically outside of venture racing to develop your map reading skills, your navigation skills?
Yeah, so I do go to a number of the orienteering club events locally. I also have done a few Rogaine events that are 6 or more hour events with some other people. Really has just been trying to get myself to those orienteering events and trying harder courses in those events. Initially, I wasn't super comfortable with a compass, so I was doing a lot of the intermediate courses just using features, which is helpful in a lot of ways to develop that feature identification and trails, but using a compass, I would have been faster. I'm way more comfortable with compass now, but back when I first started, I was just using the features, and I think that helped me kind of develop the skills that translate to adventure racing pretty well.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feeling when you have a map in your hands. You're like, wait a minute, that's that thing, right? You see a hill on the map, like that's where we want to be, and you get that right. It's a really, really nice feeling. I think that's why so many people, I think orienteering and navigation is a harken back to our childhoods, right? The idea of playing in the woods and having fun running around and doing that. And on top of that too, the little shot of dopamine when you come across a flag. Right. You find it and, oh, this is great. And isn't it amazing how when things are falling apart and the team is disintegrating and you find that flag, everything is healed. We're great. We're the best team in the world. Let's keep racing. How do the two of you during the race take care of yourselves physically in terms of your feet, in terms of any hot spots, your hands? Do you wear gloves, things like that? Like we'll start from the bottom up. What do you do for foot care during a race?
Yeah, I do. I definitely noticed after time and doing a lot of stuff, that was probably the best thing for my feet. Because, earlier on, I had to be a lot more careful with changing socks, what kind of socks I was using, what kind of shoes I was using. But now, I don't know, my feet are in pretty good shape and a little bit more durable, I would say. I definitely found going to larger sized shoes made a big difference in just, make some space for your toes.
Yeah. Having that toe box in the front, you're not bashing your toe against the front of the shoe. Yep.
Yep. Sometimes you want them a little tighter if you're moving faster, but in any of the longer races, like more space is just for me, it's been way better. And now I never have problems with my toes or blisters, or kind of like them rubbing together. Also, foot care before the race, especially if it's going to be a wet race. Just getting some moisturizer on your feet. It's super uncomfortable. I don't like it at all, but it's worked fantastic for if I do a wet race and then not having to worry about too much moisture absorption in my feet during the race. But yeah, I usually go through a few pairs of socks every race just to be safe.
So you're cool with the wet socks going into the dry socks going into wet shoes? You don't find that that's frustrating?
No, not for me. Not bad.
Okay. Yeah, there appears to be two trains of thought. One is the idea I got one pair of socks and I'm going to ride these ones out the entire time because my feet are happy and I'm happy. But psychologically, putting on a pair of dry socks sometimes really helps also.
Yep.
Actually, how about you, foot care?
Yeah, so I've learned a lot of things for adventure racing through Greg. So when they first told me that I should do things to my feet and lube them, I thought they were crazy. I did quickly realize that putting some sort of Vaseline or something on them was helpful, especially in wet races. But being able to change socks when they're wet is helpful. For Shenandoah, we had a pretty dry race, surprisingly. It wasn't supposed to be so dry. So I forewent an additional pair of socks in my pack, and we were getting to that trek section, and I needed socks. So Greg actually let me use his backup pair of socks, and he even walked
guys,
through...
wait a minute, time out. That's a big moment in the teammate. In the team, when you're sharing socks, gotta tell you, that's a barrier you've crossed through. Good job, team. That's very, you guys got to race together forever now.
I don't think I would have gotten through with feet that would have made it through the race without him being open to letting me use those socks. Interestingly, though, he also crossed, because I had just recently put those dry socks on, and then there was a creek he wanted to cross instead of going around. And I said, I don't have another pair of socks. So he also carried me across the creek to make sure that those stayed dry. So foot care is important. Having spare socks is important, is what I've discovered. So
yeah, my feet were just my enemy earlier when I started adventure racing. It knocked me out of races. Like the first Stockville, I had to quit halfway through day one because my feet were just destroyed. And the advice that I got, and Abby Perkis was huge in connecting me with somebody who knew about this. First things first, around the house, walk around in bare feet as much as you can. Right, toughen your feet up. Right, Greg. That's a big thing. Your feet over time they pick up. Having a good socks that you grow comfortable with. I have like 6 pairs of socks that I race in, and like if my house was on fire, I would knock down my wife to save these socks. Like they completely keep my feet dry. Foot lube, but during the race, keeping those feet dry. But I'll tell you one thing I picked up on, which I thought was a really, really good trick. You have to get used to it. Is the days leading up to the race. If it's going to be a really, really long race, right? Like I'm talking like multiple days, is at night sleeping, putting goo on your feet and then sleeping with socks on. Like huge, like a life-changing choice when it came to foot care, because nothing is worse than having your feet fall apart. But I do think in the longer races, my experience has been that it's going to happen. Like just about everybody just has feet that just have a really, really hard time. But there's a formula to avoid that, and that's what matters. Mm-hmm. What about nutrition during the race? Are you real food people, or are you like unwrapping stuff out of plastic, or are you a mixture?
I like to do a mixture if I can. If I'm really pushing myself, I will stick to easier to digest stuff. But usually I'm not going too hard. I'm pacing myself at a speed that I can still digest food. I had no problem in this race stopping at 7-Eleven and eating 2 slices of pizza, a banana, and an eclair. but when I am pushing myself, luckily I also have no problem with like sweetness. So I could literally just eat like sugar, syrup, whatever, and it doesn't bother me, and it helps a lot.
Yeah, during a race, those simple carbohydrates, those simple, we eat like kindergartens at a birthday party, right? We don't, if we ate like that outside of there, we'd be sick as dogs. But during a race, you could do that. Ashley, how about you? What's your food strategy?
Yeah, there's a few jokes about racing with me that I share, and Greg has also shared with some of the strangers that I've raced with. Having pizza in the bin, if we have bins, is something that's just going to make me happy, even if it's cold and many hours old. Doritos are my other pick-me-up. I usually have a few small bags of Doritos available as well. A mixture of some gummy gels, different things like that. But I'm much happier eating something that I enjoy.
Yeah. Very often it's the food that I have like an emergency Snickers bar that like it sits in my pack, and it's like break in case of like a crisis, and I have that right away. And on top of that too, I also find that when my teammates have in their pack tends to be really tasty. The food that they have, it's like I'll eat out of their pack. Greg, before I actually shared about the tough time that she was having with the overnight, that experience. In your racing experience, now you have 19 years of racing behind you, right? You mentioned 06 as being your first race, and now we're in 2025. 19 years, you mentioned a fair amount of races every year. Talk to us about an experience that you might have had during a race that you had to work to get through, something that was really hard. And what did you do?
Easily the hardest one for me was at one of the longest day races when I was racing solo. And that was the first like overnight solo race that I had done, and not having companionship, I think turned out to be the hardest thing. 'Cause late in the hours of night, early morning, when I did start getting tired, I really had that feeling of I hit the wall, and then I knew that I hadn't kept up on my nutrition, and I hadn't seen anyone in like a couple hours.
Oh man, tired, hungry, and alone.
Yeah. So then when I finally did get somewhere, and I thought I was kind of like doing pretty well, and then I saw a whole bunch of teams, and then I had that feeling of like, oh, I must not be doing very well, and I just like had that like crushed feeling, and I was having trouble eating, and like the next 3 or 4 miles I did were pretty miserable, but I just kept walking. I think what picked me up is I just switched to water with electrolytes and again, easy to digest sugar. And then when that sun came up, it just like snapped back. And so I've since learned a couple things that really help for me is a really bright light at night. So like that kind of like whiter, really bright lumens help my brain stay awake and not get sleepy in the first place. And kind of consistently having a little bit of food or even gum or something in my mouth really like keeps that sleep away, and I usually don't have any problem with it. I haven't done another like big solo race like that, so I don't know if that still would be an issue not having anyone around. But in any of the team races, I rarely have any issues with getting sleepy anymore.
When you talk about team and teamwork, and you race together, you also race with other people, and you've seen other teams on the course themselves. What experience have you had seeing teams having a difficult time working together, and what did you learn from seeing that happen?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, and I think communication beforehand to try to prepare for what could happen or might happen is the biggest thing you can do. Luckily, like the main guy that I race with, Peter Miller, he and I have just naturally kind of had a really good strategy and similar strategy, and have no problem like switching over to each other. Like, oh, I'm struggling right now, like I'm just gonna let you take over for a little bit. And I think that's an important thing to just be able to do with your teammates, is just, sometimes just let them handle it and just be ready to accept that for a little while. And then when you come back around, or when you're ready to maybe take back over or have some more input, just kind of like wait for that time, wait for that to come. Man, but yeah, definitely a lot of other teams struggle. Well,
your eyes lit up when I asked the question, and actually we're coming to you next, so get ready. But like, you've seen things, haven't you, Greg?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Like,
yep.
Have you seen the in the TA, no one talking to each other? Is it that
yeah.
example?
Yeah. No one talking to each other. People ready to leave. People like going almost different directions, and then being like, we can't split up. Like what? Like who's going to give first? Who's gonna surrender and go the other way? So, oh man, that looks rough. I'm pretty glad that it's never gotten to that point with any of my teams yet. But
I have seen the race director being the NTA therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of people talking everyone back together a little bit, and be like, everyone take a break. We're going to be able to catch your breath and just get back out on the course, right? Because they show into the TA and you could see it a million miles away. Just the dynamic is just so off.
Yep. Yeah.
Ashley, how about you?
Yeah, obviously fewer races that I've been in to observe a lot of things, but I have witnessed a few interesting dynamics. One that stands out was a racer had, I think, lost their like punch card, and so the teammates were kind of squabbling about that, and where did you put it, or why didn't you do this? And I just remember thinking, that's really tough, and I hope that I don't end up in a situation like that. Like I want to make sure I'm doing the things I'm responsible for as a teammate, and also, if I were to find myself in that position, would be able to communicate through that. So really, when I observe those things, I just try to take it as a note of what things were uncomfortable for me that I could take as a note for how I interact in the future. So why do you think the two of you are attracted to the sport? Right? It sounds kind of obvious, right? When you get to this point in the interview and you're having a conversation, but like,
This is a very, very, I think adventure racing, when it comes to endurance sports, sits in its own category, right? Because we draw upon so many different dynamics, team dynamics, mental, emotional, physical, the whole 9 yards. What do you think? When you think about your personality, about the sport, what keeps pulling you back to it?
I really like that there's a different strategy every time. So there's a novelty to each race. Being able to be outdoors, which is something I love. It's always been a way that I kind of, dig into myself and find myself. And really just seeing what I'm capable of. I think it's a great opportunity to really push myself and try hard things and kind of get that affirmation that I can do hard things and have success and learn how to do things differently, learn from other people. I actually have really enjoyed being in a team dynamic and being teamed with so many different people that I didn't know before, because I've learned so much just in the year that I've really been racing. So learning and getting to do real life puzzles, I think, is the key for me.
So, Greg, I'm going to come to you for a second, but I want to kick back to Ashley real quickly, because you mentioned the idea of racing with other people and learning a lot, right? And we learn by watching, we learn by observing. What preconceived notions did you have about the sport and about what was expected of you were changed as a result of getting involved? You thought it was going to be one way and ended up being a different way.
I honestly thought that it was going to be really hard and something that I wasn't going to be able to do. I didn't think I would be physically capable of completing a 24-hour race. And I know I'd seen Greg and Peter do longest day and nationals in 2023. And I asked Greg if he could show me the maps and kind of go through what they did after the race, because I just thought it was so interesting. And I somewhat jokingly said, someday I'm going to go to nationals. And I didn't think that was a reality. I see Greg and Peter as like amazing athletes, especially considering I don't have a significant athletic background. And a few years ago, I had my spleen out, so like a major surgery that I had to recover from as well. So just really my own internal thoughts or the preconceived notions of I didn't think it was possible. So.
And clearly you found the sport to be a soft landing space, right? Because you had these feelings that I can't do this, then all of a sudden you're doing this, right? And along the way, the teammates carried you along. And that's where you realized you could do those things.
Yep.
Greg, how about you?
Like for me, a big part of it is the unknown factor. Like every race you go to, there's something new. There's going to be, a new surprise, a new problem. And, mixing that in with the physical aspect of pushing yourself, the mental aspect of trying to like solve these problems, find the best route. And, new things that'll show up along the way that you have to figure out and solve, or especially when you have to start cutting checkpoints and making sacrifices and, figuring out what you can do that'll still end up with the best case possible. And I don't know, it just takes you to that aspect of like, yeah, this feels like an adventure. This is fun. I want to do another one.
Right, exactly. And the problem solving and the teammate and all of that. And I agree. I think that for me, the problem solving aspect, if you see the race as one big problem to solve, right, and to draw upon all those different areas to solve it, you're spot on about that. You mentioned the idea of cutting the checkpoints and make those decisions. And this was a conversation I had with somebody else previously. Walk us through as a team. First things first, when people start racing, it blows their mind that you're not expected to get every single checkpoint. Right. I remember talking to newer racers and they thought that if they didn't get a checkpoint, they lost, they failed. And we're like, no. There's mandatory and there's optionals. And you have to do the math on that. And this question is hard because it is so situation specific. But when do you begin to make the calculation of, okay, here we are on the course. Here's how much time we have left. There's the checkpoints. How early do you start having that conversation? Or is it just each race is different?
I've been doing it long enough now that usually my team can start having that conversation right from the beginning. We can, especially if you get the map, if you do get the maps beforehand and you have time to do a little bit of planning, we have a good idea, like, you know, how long a certain foot section or a bike section is really going to take us, if we have any chance of clearing everything, and then what do we want to cut out. Then, like, as things progress, it's usually going to be based on individuals' energy levels, and, you know, you just kind of like being open with your team about what pace you're really going to be able to keep up, or if some injury is like really slowing you down. And kind of the earlier you can factor that in, the better decisions you can make, especially, you know, if it is like a knee problem or something, and are you going to feel better on bike? So like, let's stop running around in the woods now, get on the bike and try to clear that section instead. So being able to like quickly adapt really, you know, helps do well in the long run. I mean, I do go into every race with the mindset like, I'm going to be able to clear this thing, but I usually always still have to, you know, as a team, be like, okay, now it's time to reassess that strategy.
Yeah, I know for myself too. Like I hate the idea of being late, and so I'm the person on the team that the other teammates have to be like, cut it out, Bri. Like, we're not going to be late. Shut up. You just want to get finished, right? You just want to be done. And you're not going to be done. And we're going to go get these checkpoints on that mountain and pipe down. Like, I'm that person that they have to push to get going, because nothing to me is worse than coming in late. It's just, it's my own personal thing. I have teammates, though, on the other hand, are like the polar opposite of that. Like Joker to the Batman. Like, they'll stay out there forever. And I'm like, we got to go. Like, we can't, like, what? Yeah. Like, we should not be going up when we should be going down, right? We should be getting back there. Ashley, how about you? How do you make that calculation during a race when you're navigating?
Yeah, I'll say that each race I've been in has been different, and a lot of it is decided beforehand. So depending on the skill set or fitness of the teammates I've been with, a lot of times it's been my fitness, which has been lower in some instances than others based on me being new to the sport, and just saying it's not realistic for me to go and get that many checkpoints, or I don't think I can get that much elevation. Let's reconsider the plan so that we can have the best possible outcome. And, you know, the teams I've been with, we've made pretty good decisions. It's interesting because Shenandoah this year, I signed up for it back when it first went out for registration. So no idea what it was going to be like.
Great race. And Mark Harris puts a great race on every year.
And I thought, you know, being the first part of my season, I'll go into it thinking I'm not going to clear a course. I'll just use it as like getting into the season, and maybe we'll get 50 to 100 miles in, but nothing too crazy. We won't clear a course. I just want to get myself into it for the season. And then he had the pre-race briefing and additional information in the racer guide that I realized this isn't what I meant to sign up for. So,
why? Because it was too big? It was bigger than you expected it to be?
It was bigger than what I expected for my first race of this current season. So that said, when he said he put it for 30 hours so that most teams could clear it, I said, Greg, I want to clear this. We're going to be out there for the full 30 hours. If he says we can clear it, I want to clear it. And then my sleepies kicked in. We were on track to clear the course, and I was just like, I don't think we can clear the course. I don't think it's possible for us to get those extra points once we get near the finish. And we attempted to cut a point out, only to realize that going along the ridge was not actually a trail. It was a county line. Oh. And so to my...
Did you see the markers? Like, did they have like the marker? Yeah, you're like, oh, great, county line. Okay, yeah. Okay.
To my distress, that meant I had to go back down the ridge while sleepwalking, and then eventually back up the ridge, which meant we had to get the 1 point we were trying to cut out to save a little bit of energy. So once I put all that effort in, I was just like, I really want to clear this course since I had to get that point. But yeah, sometimes it's dynamic and in the course of what can we realistically achieve in the time allotted.
So, and I apologize if I missed this. Did you clear the course for the race?
We did.
There you go. You don't bury the lead there. Actually, you got to let the audience know. Leave us in suspense.
We did.
And a nice result, by the way. What was your placing overall?
I believe that we were 29 out of 60 place teams, but I think it was about 80 that started. So, some dropped teammate or other things. So I'm really pleased. We got second in the 2-person co-ed division.
Love that. What a nice, and it's so funny, actually, like it's the circle of life for adventure racing, right? Like you signed up for the race. Oh God, this is too hard for me. Let's get started. You get the sleepies. You hang in there. Next thing you know, you're second in the category, and you're in the top half of the field for a really, really, really hard race. Shenandoah is not a joke. What did it talk about after the race and the idea of debriefing? Do you have either of you, either on this iteration of a team or other teammates, have you had like a formal conversation after a race to break down what went well, what didn't? Or do you use the car ride home for that? Do you circle back on that? Like, learning from every race is essential to grow into the next race. We know that, right? How do you build upon the experience so that it's worthwhile from a looking back perspective?
I'd say like when we can stay awake, I do most of it usually on the car ride home. But sometimes, you're just a little too out of it. Then I'd say, I don't know, we'll usually just get together over like a dinner or something like that afterwards, and we'll bring the maps with us and take a look at what we did, try to figure out, if there was something better we could do, try to see what we could do for pacing or time strategy for the next race. And then similarly, when it gets close to the next big race, we'll always get together and do a gear check together and a little bit of like a reminder on new things that we might want to try, so that, everyone on the team knows if we are going to do something a little bit different than we have done previously. So that, really helps with preparedness.
I wasn't pleased early when I started racing. I felt I could have been a much better teammate. I was really down on myself. Like the races would end and I'd be like, listen, I wasn't who I was supposed to be. And I actually made for myself like a self-evaluation form that I would sit down and I would fill out after the race, and I would keep those forms. And it gave me a chance to be introspective, and I knew I'd want to work on for the next race. And then slowly I grew as a teammate along the way. I remember that being, I've had the best teammates and they're so good. And there's those I feel like such a schnook, right? And I've really kind of grown in that direction. So I think that's a valid thing, right? The work that you're doing in terms of having a conversation over dinner, that car ride home. If both of you never know, if one of you sleeps, the other one shouldn't. Keep that in mind. Get another driver. But definitely that's an essential part, is to build upon your past race so your next race is a better experience. How have you found that adventure racing has informed your non-adventure racing, like work and life experiences? What have you learned on the course that you bring into your day-to-day lives?
It's definitely made me a better planner and list maker. I never did a lot of that before, even for like camping trips. But now I have kind of like a pretty standard checklist that I can go through real fast with what I need to pack, like what lights I need to charge, what I need to buy at the store, what I might need to like refresh and get ready. And it just makes things so easy and efficient. And you're not fumbling, where everything is when you get to the race. And then even during the race, like I was even complimented one time, like at the end of the race, someone said they saw me and I was at a TA. I got out like all these bags and I put them in a row. Because I knew like that was exactly the order that I needed to go through to like quickly change my socks, what I needed to eat, what gear I needed to switch out of my bag. And as I finished each one, close that bag, toss it back in the transition bin, and go to the next one, do what I needed to do in that one, toss it in the transition bin, and got out of there as fast as possible. So, that stuff like that has definitely like translated into the way I do other things now sometimes. So,
Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I've kind of learned through adventure racing, or maybe kind of had reiterated in adventure racing that I carry over now into work and personal life, is kind of along the lines of that time thing, that you can kind of talk through or plan or try to make the best decision possible, whether it's in the adventure race or something for work. And sometimes you just gotta go. Like, you can't decide forever. You can't deliberate between teammates. Should we go up the creek or should we take the trail? Eventually you need to make a decision, because Greg and I talked about this, about one of the, it was actually kind of an in-race debrief. We had decided to go up a creek and do some bushwhacking. We could have taken a trail, but it was one of those, like, let's just take the creek and let's not overthink it, and we'll see what happens. And really just making a decision and going with it and pivoting as you go. That carries directly over into everyday life.
Yeah, what's the movie Wag the Dog had the expression, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Like, just go. We got to make a decision. We're wasting time here. And the clock's ticking. We can't spend 20 minutes debating this move. We're going that direction, and off we go. And then the team makes the agreement with themselves that if that was a bad decision, we got to repair ourselves from it. But that's what you do there. Mm-hmm. Very nice. We're getting close to the end of our time together, and I appreciate you coming on the Dark Zone. I always like to ask folks about aspirations. Like, you've had success, you've done well in these races, the 24-hour races. What do you want to do going forward and growing forward as an adventure racer? Do you have any big races on your horizon? Do you have different distances on your horizon? Personal goals? Ashley, go ahead. Where do you want adventure racing to take you?
Yeah, so I am planning to do a few more races this year, trying to pick exactly which ones. It will likely be with some people I haven't raced with before, because I've gotten a lot out of learning from others and just experiencing through other people's lens. It's been a really enjoyable part of the sport for me. I do think at some point I would want to do an expedition or multi-day race. I don't know how soon, because that's a whole different animal that I'm just not quite ready for. But I think my aspirations are doing a longer multi-day race.
Greg, how about you?
Yeah, similarly, I really should commit to doing an expedition level race and just take that leap past the 36-hour mark, or to the point where I have to sleep. I think only in one race did I maybe start to hallucinate a little bit, when I thought there was graffiti on the rocks when it was just moss.
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, heads looking at you and stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd like to see what happens in a multi-day race, and how I have to change and adapt to a the completely different beast that really becomes at that level. Yeah. I guess for some of the shorter ones in less than 2 days, I would say. I finally got my sister, who's an even way better athlete than I am. I finally got her into adventure racing, and so I'm looking forward to doing some more races with her and getting into some competitive level now in the races we're doing in the co-ed divisions.
Are you using your adventure race experience, either of you? You mentioned outdoors. Are you using what you're learning in adventure racing to plan adventures on your own? Are there trips that you want to take, places you want to see, that you lean back upon, like the spirit and the ethic and the learning in adventure racing to make those adventures?
Yeah, I would say sure in some ways, but I don't think other people appreciate that it looks like I'm barely packing anything and I want to go do a 50-mile hike through some crazy place. So it's hard to find other people to join for adventures like that. But yeah, absolutely. It changes the game on what I like now when I go visit somewhere new. When I say, hey, I can do this hike or this backpacking trip, and just completely different, and to me I really enjoy how much it's done for fitness level and just safety level, and what I'm comfortable with and what I can go get out and explore now.
Ashley, what do you think?
Yeah. So I'm still an aspiring Adirondack 46er. I'm about halfway there. And we'll see how I handle them. I still enjoy the leisure hiking, taking in all the scenes, all the little things. But it's made me realize that if I really want to, whether it's the high peaks or some other challenge in the mountains in the Northeast, I can do them a lot faster. I'm very physically capable of that. And I don't think I was giving myself enough credit previously on the adventures that I would do. So I definitely intend to kind of bag some more peaks and change my strategy for that. But it's made me realize that I can get a lot more done out in the mountains than I thought I could.
Well, there you have it, folks. Episode 137 of the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. Thank you to NYARA Team Trek or Treat for coming on the show. They were delightful, and we hope that they keep racing and keep learning and find their way to those multi-day races, because they're out there for them. Thanks again for being a listener. If you like what you hear on the Dark Zone, please head to your latest and greatest podcast platform to like, click, and subscribe. And remember, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking.